Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise is due to Allah. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan rasuluhu. That is, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. And I further bear witness that Muhammad, peace and prayers and blessings be upon him, was the last and final messenger and prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. God is greater. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. God is greater, God is greater, God is greater. God is greater than anything we can think of, see, touch, taste, feel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than that. And we know this, of course, by the magnificent signs that he gives us. The wonderful mercies, continuous blessings, reminders that are always given to us to keep us connected to him so that we may be prosperous, right? So we may be the best of mankind, be the best of ourselves and be the best of humankind. So I normally start with something that reminds me of Allah's greatness. And with the theme that I want to speak about, we were watching me and my family were watching a little YouTube clip, and the clip looked as if these people were it looked as if they were on the ocean, right? And then there was this big, massive wave coming, almost like a tsunami. And people panicked and was like, ah. And then when the wave got closer, they saw that it was a mass of birds. So it had to be millions, right? Millions of birds coming together, all just swarming all together at one time. And I said, wow, how magnificent. How does so many people, so many entities, so many animals flow together like one thing, so much so that they look like one solid form, right? One entity coming like a massive wave. And so Allah shows us this sign quite often, the swarms, right? Swarms of bees, flocks, right? Flocks of geese, of different kind of birds, flock of sheep, of deer, elk. They move like one entity. And sometimes so much so that there was research has been done that says that depending on the number, the more numerous that a flock is, right, the more responsive it is to danger or to anything that tries to restrict it or get in its way. So they said if you have a massive flock of birds, just like we saw on the camera flying, and you decided to take arrows and shoot it up at them, they would respond almost faster than one bird's central nervous system, right? As if they would open up a space and move out the way of that arrow. And so we can think about this, right? We can think about the reasoning for it. We can say that there are always more eyes in the room, right? If there are more people there, then or more animals or more beings there, then there are more eyes to see what's going on. But the spirit that has them all sync together as almost one thing, it doesn't give them time to even think, right? It just gives time for a response. So all it takes is one entity, one single bird to see it, and then he sees it and he moves and they just respond, right? It's not a thought process. So that in itself is a mercy for the birds, for the flock, for those things that travel in groups in that manner. Because when we think about where it comes from and what the reason and the purpose is for protection for those animals. You can see it even in fish. I'd love to see that, the massive swarms of fish, and they go, they move like one entity. It's just amazing to see how many entities can move as if they're one body. So Allah gives us this sign to show us the powers of numbers, right? And how we can all connect, because we can connect in that way as well, as people. Now, so Allah is most merciful in showing in that sign in us recognizing the power of groups of the numbers. But there can be a downfall to that, right? When it comes to being herds. So, trying to see where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Al-Fatiha, right? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Praise be to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of all worlds, most gracious, most merciful, master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship and thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way, or the straight path, the way of those on whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, and those whose portion is not wrath and who do not go astray. Sadaqallahu Azim. It's a nice opening, right? So I figured I'd read that first. But the Al-Fatiha, of course, is the opening for the Quran, which we all know. It's a nice way of cleaning our plate, right? Like going back to the original, right? And I wanted to do that because part of me, with all of what's going on, we get caught up in everything that's going on. And so our conversation seems to focus on that, which is not always bad. But I think sometimes we need to take a step back and go back to things that are always accurate, right? Things that are always valid, and go back to the very opening. Al-Fatiha is seen or is said that it almost can encompass the entire Quran, right? It's like the miniature Quran within the Quran. So I mentioned this one because we can talk about Al-Fatiha forever, and that's not what I'm up here for. Because this, I know brothers that can go on for hours and hours just on that for good reason. But just looking at Ihdina Sirata Mustaqim, show us the straight way, the way of those on whom thou hast bestowed thy grace. So just emphasis on Allah asking us to make this, which is a dua, right? It's a dua, asking us to make this dua to show us the path, right? Show us the way. He didn't say show us the group of people, show us, he mentioned the people that have gone this way, but he didn't say the group of people, he said the path, the way, not even the leader, right? The individual. Show us the way that the individual, that the leader was on. Show us the path that that special person that you anointed has went and moved down. Show us that. And I say that because sometimes we get comfortable being a part of the flock or a part of the swarm, which is we just start moving with what everybody else is doing, right? So with that being said, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was reported by Abdullah bin Umar that Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, all of you are shepherds, and each one of you is responsible for his flock. An imam is a shepherd, and he is responsible for those in his care. A man is a shepherd in respect of his family, and he is responsible for those in his care. The woman is a shepherd in respect to her house and in responsible for what is in her care. The servant, even the servant is a shepherd in respect of his master's property and is responsible for what is in his care. All of you are shepherds, and each of you is responsible for his flock. So these are really powerful words. It really hit me because I remember when Imam Muhammad, right? May Allah be pleased with him and grant him paradise. I remember when he mentioned, and these were words of freedom for me, right? When he mentioned that each one of us were imams in some respect. I had never read this hadith. I heard it from him first. And he said that each one of you are imams in respect, in some form or fashion, that each one of us are leaders, have responsibilities. And it opened up, it gave me a freedom. And if I could share just a bit of my story, because part of me that almost pulled me off the path when I was 17 years old was people presenting Islam in a manner that I felt was not Islamic, right? And I was in that group, in that crowd, in that flock, and everybody went left, and I was like, this don't seem like the right way to go. And so they went so far left that I almost thought like, okay, Islam is not for me. If this is Islam, this is not for me. And that was my perspective. But when I heard that each individual, right? Each individual is an imam. What does that mean? That means just what it says in Al-Fatiha, that it is not men necessarily that we follow. It is paths laid out by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that men do follow and sometimes can show us through example. But we don't look directly at them. We look at what they're doing, right? If it is the right thing. So that gave me a sense of freedom. And Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he brought Quran, he brought his sunnah, and he gave all of us freedom. He gave everybody freedom. He gave you freedom of being a part of that herd that just moves out of response. So this hadith is telling us that we are not sheep, especially you Muslim, right? You believer, you one who has been given the right path, the direct connection to Allah. He's saying that we are just the opposite, that we are shepherds, right? Those who herd the sheep, those who lead and take care of the sheep. So let's go back just a little bit further on what a shepherd is, right? So a shepherd is one whose main concern is the well-being and health and protection and security and nurturing of the sheep, right? It's not a position of glory, right? If you ever, actually, a lot of people used to look down on the shepherd, right? Because he's the one, in some societies, the shepherd was they sent the little boy out to be the shepherd because he couldn't do the manual labor that other people can do. So you can go take care of the sheep, right? So that's why I used to find a lot of stories about, little boy blue, little boys herding animals. But so because it's not a glorified position. But if you replace in this, because it says, if you replace shepherd with leader, then everybody wants to take a hold of it, right? But they forget what the job of the shepherd is. So I just want to add one more thing to this before I move on. The skill sets that I looked up the skill sets of a shepherd, right? This is from one who is a mentor of shepherds. Shepherd, the lifestyle and it is not so obvious in our societies today, but they still exist. And so she said, she gives a list. So she's a master shepherd according to, her credentials. And she said, these are the things that are required of a shepherd. Number one, they must be tough at heart. Shepherding is not about sweet lambs and bollocking postures and sheep grazing. It is about survival of the fittest. It is about making life and death decisions that can tear your heart apart, right? Number two, you must be willing to do hard work. Shepherding does not just require hard physical laboring of moving fences, moving sheep, and handling 40 pounds of bay. It is about heart work. It is about doing hard things and making hard decisions. Number 3, you must be willing to be humbled daily. Proud people need not apply. I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm just going to read the points. Number 4, you must not be afraid to learn new things. I think I can silence that one. You must not be afraid to learn new things. On a regular basis, you will be required to learn new skills, new tasks, new way of doing things. She said that she had an experienced culture over her when she was trying to deliver a labored ewe. And he said, if you don't want to do it, then you should not be a shepherd, right? If you don't want to do that hard work, that uncomfortable thing, you should not be it. Number 5, you must have great endurance. Number 6, you must exhibit the ability to observe, to watch. And number 7, you must have patience. So this is a list that most people would not see under the list of leadership, right? If we titled it leadership. But this is the list of necessary things for a shepherd to have in order to be prosperous as a shepherd, coming from a professional shepherd. All right, so let's step back from that. So all of these things, tough at heart, hardworking, humble, not afraid to learn things, do new things, having endurance, having the ability to observe, to watch, to see, and having patience are necessary in order to do that job. And for us, the job is not an option, right? They say if you can't do it, it's not an option. The prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, told us that is our job and our responsibility. So we have to make sure that we are in a predicament to be good shepherds. And what does that mean? That means building all of those things that she just made list of. But then more importantly, that means that we need to make sure that we're on the right path, that we are following God's wisdom and no one else's. Because if we're not, we mess around and we'll be down on our hands and knees, just like the sheep. We'll be a sheep when we're supposed to be shepherds. So we want to make sure that we are being responsible for our flock. And so when we talk about our flock, leadership or shepherd lifestyle, it doesn't necessarily mean one person up there with a hooked cane, right? It's not always that. As the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, each individual is held with a bit of responsibility. When you think about yourselves, and I know my daughters sometimes give me flack when they put down responsibilities for men and women. So we could talk about that, but let's just talk about whatever charge or responsibility that each one of us has been given. If you walk into your workplace and you're responsible for the floor in that workplace, then you are the shepherd for the cleanliness of that floor. You're responsible to keep that floor clean and kept. That's your job. You're the leader of floors. If you happen to be in a big position as a CEO, then yes, you are the shepherd. You are responsible for the well-being of everybody in that company. You are responsible for their prosperity. You're responsible for their health. You're responsible for everything that makes them do well. That's your job. If you're in a home, you're responsible for that. And role-wise, every man is responsible for his family. And every woman, role-wise, is responsible for her family, right? For her household. So these are all positions of leaderships. These are all almost positions of emanships, right? And so we have to take on that title, which Allah has given us, and which the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, has referred to here, and own it. Own it, earn it, accept it, and do the best job that we can at that. So if we do that, we don't necessarily have to worry. We don't have to worry about everything, right? When we start having problems, and we might see them, problems from afar, problems from up close, if you start listing all of the problems that we have in society, all of the problems that you might even have as an individual, when you start making a list, if you do the job of making that list, I guarantee you, you're going to come out feeling horrible, right? So we have to recognize problems, but then we have to recognize what our role is in resolving those problems. And what does that mean? With animals, you can lead a flock easily if you know how that animal thinks, right? So you know how the sheep thinks, you know to make a loud noise over there is going to scare them because they think it's a predator, and then they'll turn left, right? You know that you not need to get up ahead of them and stop this one, because even in a sheep herd, there are sort kind of leaders. They're just like a flock of birds. There are leaders. So you know if you stop this one sheep, then the rest of them are going to stop as well. So you have to know how that animal thinks. Human beings are quite the same. You have to know how human beings think in order to, to get them to do what you want to do. And so this can be damaging because that's exactly what society does for us. They figure out what we like and what we don't like. And they operate, they motivate based on passions and hunger, right? And this is the same thing that happens with sheep. They move and run out of fear. They are trying to make sure that they can get the best grass, right? There was a study done in Germany, of all places, that demonstrated that flock-like behavior was in humans as well. And they said that the group of people exhibited a very similar behavior pattern to that of a flock, where 5% of the flock would change directions, the others would also follow suit. When one person was designated as a predator, and everyone else was to avoid him. The flock behaved very much like a school of fish, they said. So with this knowledge, those people who place themselves in leadership positions and want to control the masses, they do it based off of basically fear. If somebody heard of guns, matter of fact, in this study, if the gunshots were used, if somebody heard a gunshot, and they only took one person, this the old joke about people say one person get this, they're run, and everybody just runs in that direction. They have no idea where he's going, but they know, I'm afraid, so he looked like he's going the right. It's automatic instinct. So they run in that one direction. So fear controls herds. And also greed or desire for hunger, for food, for power, for passion. You ring a bell, or you come down the street with an ice cream truck, music coming, and everybody runs to it, right? Everybody wants something. They want some ice cream. And even if you didn't, like when we go to concerts and you don't know where the place is, but you see all the crowds, everybody's going over here. So even when you're thinking, you're like, I think I'll go over there too. They must be going in some place. This thing is natural, right? This thing is innate. So we have to be conscious enough that it's innate, and we have to be conscious of our role as a shepherd, not a sheep. So with that being said, we want to take on the position of shepherd, vicegerent, the position of caretaker for all that we have within our arm's reach, within our mind's reach. And we don't want to overwhelm ourselves. We want to be aware of the problems, but we want to be able to manage what it is that we can handle. If my job is to make sure Well, my responsibilities start with making sure I'm providing for my children. I want to make sure that I'm doing that, right? If my responsibilities, um, like our imam here, is the provision of the masjid, then he wants to make sure he's doing that. And sometimes it's more than one person doing that, just like cowboys. You know, it's not just one guy. They need 2, 3 people to run that herd. But the very first responsibility is our own selves. So if we want to change the world, I know we've heard this, you want to change the world, start with changing yourself. Because the mindset of the human is to move or to respond with what the group is doing. So even if you are in that group and you change your behavior, if 5% of the nation changed their behavior and started doing things that were proper and right, and others were able to observe it, there's a high likelihood that they will flock towards it. And righteousness is different from non-righteousness, of course, right? Righteousness is also innate. So there's even a more of a pull on that flock. It's not just that flock mentality, but it's the desire for that innate to be close to God, the innate desire to do what's right. So there's a quick story, then I'm gonna end this portion. There was a research done on helping people, right? So if there was a mass of people, most people throughout trauma, they get hysterical, right? They start panicking. But it only takes a few people to stop and start to help 1 or 2 people. And if they do that, then the others naturally, that natural desire, which is within them, they join into that. So what am I saying about all this? I'm saying we have to start by being shepherds of our own souls. If we want to change the world, if we want to right the wrongs, we have to lead by example, as our prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, has done. We have to lead by example, as all of the leaders that have, righteous leaders have done, because that is what will change people's thinking. It is a call, just like the adhan that just happened. It is a call to what is right. It is a call to, it is leading the herd to the water, right? Can't make them all drink, but at least they got the water in front of them. Now you can make your decision. Because animals and human beings are a little bit different. When you're trying to lead those people, you got to think about how humans think and their innate opportunities or innate drives. And being an example or fixing yourself to make sure that you're in line or on the straight path, it makes you an example for others. And it makes you the leader in that group for righteousness. So inshallah, if we can all remember the words that our prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was given, and the words that are constantly repeated in Quran, then we can remember our role and position in this world. And we can remember that we are shepherds, not sheep. ربنا آتينا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. With that being said, the other part, I don't want us to think that we are just individuals, because we're not. Because the other part of being part of a herd is knowing that community is necessary. In the ayat, it says, show us the straight way. So it's not just show me, right? It's not an individual. It's let's do this as a group. Show all of us the straight way. So that means that while we may have to get comfortable at times being alone in what it is that we have to do, right? Because the rest of the herd is not moving in that direction. Or because there are questions about whether or not what direction the herd is going to be. Sometimes the herd is just still, and you're the person that said, hey, we need to move. So we sometimes have to get comfortable with being alone, right? And like the song says, there's an old native thing. So I am not afraid to stand alone. We should not have fear in being alone because we don't wait for, and if we get it, alhamdulillah, but we don't wait for a savior to come for us. Like we don't wait for the group to move. We are told in Al-Fatiha that we are looking for the straight path already established. And it don't matter how many people are on that path or who's on that road or whether or not the road is going through thorns or it's going through rows of flower, a bed of flowers. We're going to follow that road no matter what. So sometimes we find ourselves alone on that road and it can be difficult. It can be uncomfortable, but that is the life of being a Muslim. That is the life of being one who submits his whole will to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to anything else. In this, the Al-Fatiha starts with, I mean, all of these things, that is, dare I say, that is the folk. It is. Praise be to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, most gracious, most merciful, master of the day of judgment. It focus your praise only on Allah. This whole deen is about oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that means that no herd, no group of people, no sharpshooter, no smart man, no wise does not pull you away from the right path. The wise man should be pointing you to the right path. If you ever come across a man, a leader, and he's telling you X, Y, and Z, but he's not showing you the book he's reading, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. I want to know where you got your information from. I don't want to lead. I want to follow the path, not you. So our leaders, Imam Muhammad, may Allah grant him paradise, forgive him his sins. He gave me that freedom in that moment because I had no knowledge about this hadith at that time. But also because he pointed directly to Quran. He promoted the study of Quran. And he told us to watch out for some of those guys who tell you, you don't need that. And there will be Muslims who tell you you don't need that. You just listen to me, right? There will be leaders who will tell you, this United States is ran by the Constitution, but you don't need the Constitution. I'll tell you what it says. No. I need to know that you're going in the right direction. So all that being said, we will find ourselves sometimes alone, but we are never alone. Because as long as we are on the path that Allah has given us, the most important person is with us, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who else do you need? You don't need anybody else. But in addition to that, right? All of the prophets, peace and blessings be upon him, who have served, who have walked that same path, they are with us. Whether they're not in person, but they are with us. They have left behind a wonderful wisdom that they have shared. But they are even with us. They are making salat for us, right? And in addition to that, whether you feel like you are alone in your workplace or you feel like you're alone walking the street, you have groups of Muslims, right? Us, right? We all want to go on the right path. And we might not be right next to you, but we are still with you. So there should be comfort in that. There should be remembrance and comfort in that. And the beauty of it is that we even check each other, right? If you're going to the left, I'm gonna say, hey, brother, I don't know if you should be going that way. Hey, sister, you might want to take a look back at the Quran, what it says about that. We can check one another. So while we might find ourselves solo at times, we have to remember that there is always community. There is always community. And we're blessed with this wonderful Jumu'ah day where we get to see each other. Because sometimes in this world, we are alone in that space, or so it feels. But I guarantee you, if you are acting as a shepherd and you are starting to heal, to raise yourself up first, and you are not afraid to shine, to show who you are, then others, even within that community, when you think you are alone, they're going to join you. because it is in their nature. And those who are Muslims in nature will automatically submit their whole selves, will bow. So inshallah, we remember the importance of that community because it is uncomfortable to feel alone. But we have to remember that we do have community and that the community is necessary and that even just the community of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough. Allah is sufficient. And if we could do that, then we will always be comfortable walking that path and we will always be guided by the path, inshallah, or pray for that guidance and ask that Allah keeps us on that straight path and not be deterred or distracted by the herds or the false leadership. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina sirata mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. You come to